Thank you again for your attendance. Now, let us begin the plenary 1 of Seoul Climate Energy Conference 2018. For the most, I would like to welcome all panels and the moderator, Jeon Ui-chan, Professor of Sejong University and the third President of the Korean Society of Climate Change Research. Now, the session will be led by the moderator.
Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Jeon Ui-chan from Sejong University. It's my honor to be a moderator at a really important conference to addressing the climate changes. So before starting this session, so I would like to introduce our discussion to our panels. So the Professor Richardson, is a professor of biological oceanography and reader of sustainability science, Center of University of Copenhagen. She was chair of Danish Commission on Climate Change. Professor Richardson has published over around 200 publications and more than 100 papers in international peer-reviewed journals, including 2 articles in Nature and 2 articles in Science. Please welcome Professor Richardson. Next discussion is Professor Timmerman. Professor Axel Timmerman conducted his PhD research at the Max Planck Institute of Meteorology in Hamburg. Also received his PhD in meteorology in 1999 from University of Hamburg. In January 2017, Dr. Timmerman became a director of the new IBS Center for Climate Physics at Busan National University, maybe supported by Korean research foundations. Also, he also holds a distinguished professor of Busan National University. Also welcome, Timmerman. Next discussion is senior editorial writer of 조선일보, Han Sam-hee. He started his career as a reporter in 1983 with the 조선일보 and has been still working for 조선일보 therefore after. So I think he's the early man of 조선일보. Senior editorial writer Han received BA from Seoul National University and MA from Tsukuba University in Japan in 1981 and 2002 respectively. Mr. Han published a book titled Risk Tables in 2009. This book analyzed the risk perception of citizens in general for overaction to the negligible risk of chemical hazards such as dioxin and mad cow disease, etc. Welcome, Mr. Han. Last expert is Kim Joo-jin. He is Managing Director of Solutions for Our Climate, as abbreviation type SFOC. SFOC has been concerning or advocating more effective air and climate policies and restrictions on coal power plant financing. Director Kim Joo-jin has worked for Korea's largest law firm, maybe Kim Han-jang, mainly working with financial institutions and power plant clients. He also has extensive experience with emission trading and greenhouse gas regulations. Please welcome. So, but we have not much time, so I'll give you the every discussion around 10 minutes. So please start with the Professor Timmerman.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here. I would like to thank also Professor Sang-Gyop Kim for inviting me. The title of my talk, brief talk, is Climate Change, Sea Level Rise, Human Migration and Food Insecurity. four interconnected challenges of the 21st century. And I don't want to preach to the choir here. We are all here because we know something needs to be done to reduce CO2 emissions. I would like to review some of the basic science, the basic facts, and also some of the basic projections that our future decisions will be based upon. We know the warming is taking place. About 1 degree Celsius warming has occurred over the last 100 years about. We see an intensified warming on land, in particular also in polar regions over Siberia and northern Canada. It's particularly strong. We have warming of the oceans. There are two areas which don't show a warming, south of Greenland and also in the Okhotsk Sea. It's quite interesting, but I won't go into these details. The warming is not homogeneous, so when we think about 3 degrees Celsius future climate change, we have to think that on land it will actually be more. The global mean is not representative necessarily of what's happening regionally. So that's really important to keep in mind. Ocean acidification is real. Our planet is experiencing the worst and fastest ocean acidification since the last 55 million years. And this figure shows actually over the coral reef regions in the Pacific, the aragonite saturation horizon. That's a number that characterizes how much corals can actually calcify. And what you're seeing is that over the last about 1,200 years, the levels have been relatively constant, and then as a result of the CO2 emissions, the levels have really gone down, which means calcification rates have probably dropped in that area already by about 15%, and they're expected to drop further by more than 50% over the next 80 years. So these are projections based on a worst case scenario. I hope we can do better than that. Sea level rise is real. So tonight when you're in your wonderful bathtub of this hotel, you fill it up halfway, it's about 20 centimeters. That's already what the sea level has increased over the past 100 years. And there is a clear indication for an acceleration of sea level rise, which can be attributed to the changes in the cryosphere, in particular the melting of Greenland and glaciers. And there is also some indication that Antarctica is experiencing some additional melt. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. So these are the facts. There are some complications. Of course, we know that some of the Pacific islands have been threatened very much by sea level rise. There was a famous Tuvalu option at the Copenhagen meeting, I guess. And Tuvalu is one of the poster children of global warming in some way. But interestingly, the sea level rise that they're experiencing, have been experiencing 12 millimeters per year, that much approximately, has been only due to climate change. Only 30% have been due to climate change. An additional 70% can be attributed to an intensification of the winds, as you can see in the figure here. The Pacific trade winds have intensified dramatically more than ever in the eastern equatorial Pacific, and that intensification has actually pushed the warm water towards the western tropical Pacific. So actually this trend has been reversed recently, because after the strong El Nino event 2015-2016, this trend essentially disappeared. So we are seeing that on top of the global warming, projected global mean sea level rise, we will also have patterns of sea level rise that are partly driven by natural climate variability, but also by human-induced changes in the atmospheric circulation and wind systems. So sea level rise is complicated. We always need to think about not only the global mean value, but also what's going to happen regionally. So let's take a look at the projections. We know that our decisions will determine what future we will have, and that is illustrated here in this figure from the IPCC, a summary for policymakers. We are seeing a typical business as usual scenario will give us over the next 82 years about 3 to 6 degrees warming. If action is taken, we can reduce this number dramatically. And that is the essence of essentially the climate change discussions right now. How much can we really implement new technologies, green growth, to bring down this projection over the next 50 years? This is a kind of iconic, a little bit difficult to understand figure from the IPCC, which suggests on the x-axis, so this horizontal axis, these are our cumulative total carbon emissions, and we are seeing about 540 gigatons of carbon were already emitted, but by us, by our ancestors, by humanity, and that gives us about a degree warming. Now, what is left to get 1.5 or 2 degrees warming is not much. So essentially, we have 200 to 300 gigatons left before reaching 2 degrees Celsius, which means we have to really cut down on CO2 emissions. This is a really important figure which suggests that the Paris Agreement is maybe still possible, but is very ambitious, and it really requires us to take very aggressive action. So sea level is another interesting question. I'm showing here some of our computer calculations from last week, not published yet. So we are running one of the first couple climate and ice sheet models into the future. And what we're seeing is that this climate model and the ice sheet model will show a rapid disintegration of the West Antarctic ice sheet. In our particular case, we are seeing that about 70 centimeters by the end of the century will add onto the IPCC level rise as a result of a rapid ice sheet melting from West Antarctica. This is one projection. This is highly uncertain. If we change the parameters in these models, the sea level rise due to Antarctic disintegration can be delayed significantly. So this is something to keep in mind. We don't understand the ice sheets very well, even though we are far away here in South Korea from Antarctica. Our future, the future of coastlines in Korea, will be very much determined by processes very remotely. Okay, let's talk about food insecurity. This is an interesting figure showing the relative productivity of, let's say, a standard crop. And most of the standard crops that we have worldwide, like rice and wheat and so on, they already operate very close to the temperature optimum. This is the top peak in this figure. Now, if global warming occurs, essentially the mean climate conditions will shift to the right on this figure, which suggests we are moving out of this optimal curve. And geneticists have tried, GMO companies have tried to make crops more temperature resistant. They have failed. They can make them more drought resistant, but temperature resistance is something very, very hardwired in the DNA. So projections suggest that every degree warming into the future, global warming will cause a 10% reduction in the crop efficiency and in the total yields. So this is massive. So many crops will essentially become very inefficient. So there are projections that suggest that by 2100, so in about, 82 years from now, the global productivity, food productivity will drop down by 30 to 40%, while at the same time human population will increase. So this causes a lot of food shortages in future unless action is taken. So here we have this convolution, this triple whammy, if you like, of temperature rise affecting crops, food security, droughts occurring in areas, in particular the Mediterranean area will be very strongly affected by a reduction of rainfall up to 50% over the next 100 years in a business as usual scenario, and sea level rise. All of these factors are likely to cause human movement. These factors together can cause human migration, climate-induced human migration, and estimates for the numbers range from 100 million to 1 billion climate refugees by 2100. Where are these people going to go? To South Korea or somewhere else? We don't know. So that's an issue that needs to be discussed, and it's actually the nexus between politics about climate science, about food security, about sociology, about ethnicity. Everything comes together in this question of climate-induced human migration. Let me just also point out, not all the science is very well understood. We are still working on some of the key questions. Even for a given CO2 scenario, some climate models predict that we're going to have a 3-degree warming, others suggest a 5-degree warming. So there is still some uncertainty, even on the global numbers. But it's warming, that's for sure. So that uncertainty comes about because we don't understand clouds well enough. Climate models don't resolve clouds, they're parameterized clouds, which is a big obstacle for getting more regional climate projections. Regional patterns of future rainfall changes are not very well constrained currently. We need high-resolution climate models to better assess regional changes in hydroclimate. Carbon cycle climate interactions, mentioned before also by Catherine, there is a lot of uncertainty on those. Magnitude and global and regional sea level rise is crucial. Sea level rise is perhaps going to be one of the costliest impacts of climate change. And in that regard, we need to do more research actually in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Climate extremes, are we going to have more typhoons in South Korea in future? Nobody knows. Climate versus biological societal thresholds, that was also alluded to in Catherine's talk, these tipping points. I think the tipping points that are relevant are more in the biological systems and societal systems rather than in the physical systems. So these are all important questions. And a little advertisement here, we just installed Korea's third fastest computer called Aleph that will be dedicated for climate research. And with this computer, we hope to address some of these key questions, in particular those on future sea level rise and regional climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Timmermans. So he introduced and gave an explanation on the dangerousness of sea level and the declining harvest and human migration by climate change. So I think he is basically the climate change scientist. So if you have any question, after all the discussion to finish their present, I'll give you the chance to question to him. And next speaker is the senior editorial writer, Han Sam-hee. He's a very famous people in communicating the climate change with the common peoples. Please, Kim, present.
네, 감사합니다. 반갑습니다. 한삼입니다. 먼저 말씀드리기 전에 제가 오늘 아침에 그 신문의 뉴스를 보니까 방금 그 말씀해주신 그 팀머만 박사께서 한국 과학기자회에서 수여하는 그 올해 과학자상을 수상하시는 걸로 결정이 되셨더라고요. 축하드립니다. 저는 저 크리스텐슨 교수께서 그 발표하신 것 중에 뒤편에 그 트래젝터리 제목으로 시작하는 논문을 중심으로 해서 제가 몇 가지 코멘트를 좀 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 그 논문의 그 핵심 기둥이 되는 그 두 가지 컨셉이 있습니다. 하나는 티핑 포인트고 또 하나는 포지티브 피드백의 두 가지 개념인데 사실 이 두 컨셉은 그 과학 논문에서는 그 잘 등장하지 않는 개념입니다. 먼저 이 티핑 포인트에 대해서 먼저 말씀을 드리면은 이거를 아주 그 재미있게 비유한 그 유시 버클리 교수가 계신데 그걸 인용을 해서 제가 대신 말씀을 드려보겠습니다. 그러니까 그 우리 이제 그 바르노스키 교수인데요. 그분은 우리의 지금 기후 상황을 테이블 위에다가 달걀을 놓고 그거를 테이블 끄트머리 쪽으로 슬슬 굴려가고 있는 상황과 비슷하다 이렇게 설명을 하고 있습니다. 이게 굴려가게 되면은 처음에는 뭐 아무 일도 벌어지질 않죠. 그러다가 끄트머리에 닿았을 때 이제 달걀이 바닥으로 떨어지고 그 달걀은 전에 부서지면서 완전히 그 형태가 바뀌고 다시는 원래 상태로 돌아갈 수가 없게 됩니다. 그래서 이런 그 상태 변화를 그 티핑 포인트라고 할 수 있는데 우리 지구가 그런 비슷한 티핑 포인트의 상태로 가고 있다. 그런데 이 지금 가고 있는 티핑 포인트 상황으로 가고 있는 것에 세 가지 그 특징이 있는 것 같습니다. 아까 말씀드렸다시피 우선 지금 현재 사람들 우리 세대에서 볼 때는 당장은 무슨 그 특별한 변화가 없습니다. 뭐 어떤 기후 변화로 해가지고 지금 여러분과 저희가 뭐 아주 특별한 위기 상황에 놓여 있지는 않습니다. 그러나 만일에 그 끄트머리에 택자의 끄트머리에 닿아서 떨어지는 상황으로 가면 우리는 그 상황을 도저히 그 통제할 수 없게 되고 그거를 원래 상태로 다시 되돌릴 수 없다라는 것입니다. 크리스텐슨 교수님의 그 논문에도 그 표현이 되어 있는데요. 그리고 더 중요한 거는 그 마지막에 그 떨어지는 그 순간, 그 티핑 포인트 순간이 언제 찾아올지, 예를 들어 50년 뒤가 될지 100년이 될지 이거를 우리가 도저히 지금으로서는 내다볼 수 없다는 것입니다. 그래서 이걸 한마디로 표현하면은 그 변화가 굉장히 비선형적으로 우리들한테 닥쳐온다. 그러니까 넌 리니어하게 닥쳐온다라는 것인데, 뭐 예를 들면 이런 그 만일에 그 선형적인 그 변화라면 우리가 미래를 어느 정도 예측할 수가 있습니다. 예를 들어서 온실가스가 300에서 350으로 변할 때 우리 생태계가 어떻게 변했다라는 걸 우리가 알면, 만일에 그 변화가 선형적이라면 앞으로 그 350에서 400 또는 400에서 450으로 가면은 과거에 이랬으니까 이렇게 변할 거다라고 우리가 짐작은 할 수 있는데, 이런 티핑 포인트 방식의 비선형 방식의 변화에서는 우리가 미래 상황을 짐작할 수가 없습니다. 그리고 이런 상황을 그 과학적으로 어떤 그 관찰이나 실험을 통해서 우리가 그 입증할 수가 없습니다. 바로 그런 이유 때문에 과학 논문에서는 이런 그 티핑 포인트가 사실은 기후 변화에서 굉장히 중요한 개념임에도 불구하고 이거를 연구하는 논문들은 잘 나오지 않고 있습니다. 예를 들어서 IPCC 보고서에서도 이런 티핑 포인트에 관한 그 어떤 위기, 갑작스럽게 다가오는 위기에 관한 그런 연구들은 잘 종합이 되지 않고 있어서 IPCC 보고서가 실제보다 우리의 위기 상황을 낙관적으로 지금 예측하고 있는 거 아니냐라는 주장들이 많이 있습니다. 또 하나의 컨셉은 포지티브 피드백인데요. 이 포지티브 피드백이라는 건 지금 그림에서 슬라이드에서 나오는 것처럼 굉장히 여러 가지 변수들이 서로 꼬리에 꼬리를 물면서 상호작용을 미치는 걸 의미합니다. 그렇게 되면은 지금 그림에서 나오는 거는 1970년대 그 기후 모델을 만들 때 아주 기본 그 개념도였었는데, 저런 식으로 A가 B에 영향을 미치고 B가 C에 영향을 미치고 다시 C가 A로 또 오고 막 이런 식으로 서로 얽혀 있게 되면은 완전히 어떤 그 뭐랄까 그 혼돈, 케이오스의 상황처럼 이걸 과학으로 이해한다는 게 굉장히 어렵게 됩니다. 마치 뭐 흔히 하듯이 그 북경에서 나비의 날개짓이 나중에는 뉴욕에 가면 폭풍을 일으킨다라는 얘기가 있듯이, 우리가 이 기후 시스템에서 나타나는 현상들을 좀채 이해하기 어려운 상황으로 가게 됩니다. 근데 크리스텐슨 교수님의 논문의 결론 부분인데요. 그래서 이 결론 부분도 보면은 어떻게 표현되어 있냐면 maybe approaching, 그쪽으로 갈지도 모르겠다. 혹은 저게 몇십 년 뒤에 이런 티핑 포인트 상황으로 갈 수도 있겠다라고 표현을 하고 있습니다. 또는 굉장히 커다란 변화가 올 수도 있다라고, 그러니까 온다는 게 아니고 올 수도 있다라고 표현을 하고 있습니다. 이게 바로 제가 말씀드리고 싶은 어떤 그 기후과학의 어떤 한계, 그러니까 티머만 박사께서도 말씀하셨습니다만 아주 이 uncertainty problem을 기후과학은 그 본질적으로 갖고 있을 수밖에 없습니다. 그런데다가 이 그 과학적인 그 불확실성에 더해서 이 기후 문제는 또 하나의 문제를 갖고 있는데요. 이 과학적인 불확실성 말고 이 심리적인 어떤 그 장벽 같은 걸 갖고 있습니다. 그 제가 분류를 해보면 두 가지 장벽이 있는데 하나는 공유지의 비극이라고 얘기하는 어떤 그 장벽이 있고 또 하나는 인간의 시각이 이 기후 문제를 보기에는 너무 그 근시안적이고 짧다는 두 가지 문제가 있습니다. 공유지의 비극에 대해서는 여러분도 잘 아시겠습니다만 예를 들면 이 기후 문제에 대한 책임을 우리 70억 인류 누구나가 다 이 그 책임을 지고 있는 거기 때문에 이 문제를 해결할 때도 사실은 모든 사람이 같이 그 보조를 맞춰야 되는데 누구나 다 나 말고 다른 사람들이 이거를 해결해 줬으면 좋겠다라는 어떤 자기는 그 피해 나가고 싶은 그런 심리적인 그 유혹을 받게 됩니다. 그리고 기후 변화의 피해가 아주 고르게 나타나는 게 아니기 때문에 특히 선진국 국민들의 입장에서는 그게 바로 나의 문제다라고 인식하기 어려울 수가 있습니다. 그리고 그 각 국가의 정부라는 것은 그 어떤 그 실체보다도 아주 그 자국민의 그 이익을 최우선으로 우선시하는 이기주의의 논리에 따라서 움직이게 됩니다. 이런 어떤 그 공유지의 비극 현상이 하나 있고 또 하나는 기후 변화라는 게 기본적으로는 현 세대가 어떤 그 내뿜은 그 온실가스가 다음 세대한테 와서 피해를 준다. 그러니까 현 세대의 입장으로서는 나 자신은 당장 이런 피해에서 피해를 입지 않을 거다라는 생각을 하게 되고 그래서 이 절박하게 이걸 인식하지 못하는 그런 심리적인 문제도 포함하고 있습니다. 그래서 과학적인 불확실성과 이 두 가지의 심리적인 어떤 그 장벽 때문에 사실은 이 기후 문제가 여태까지 이것이 문제가 지적되기 시작한 지 벌써 30년이 됐습니다만은 아직까지도 이 문제의 어떤 해결책이 보이지 않고 있습니다. 그래서 노르웨이 교수의 이제 표현입니다만은 이 기후과학의 문제라는 것은 이 역사상 최대의 과학 커뮤니케이션의 실패작이었다라고 표현을 하고 있습니다. 저는 이런 어떤 어떤 비관적인 상황을 보면서 그러면 이 문제를 풀어나가기 위해서는 지금 상황 가지고는 굉장히 어려운 거 아니냐. 그렇다면 어떤 정말 전 지구인들을 경각심을 줄 수 있는 어떤 작은 재앙, 미니 카타스트로피 같은 것이 우리가 이 문제를 극복하기 위한 경각심을 가지려면 그런 게 필요한 게 아니냐라는 생각을 해봤습니다. 감사합니다.
I've read the editorial writer Han Sam-i's column like this. So, as he said, the climate change expert group do not succeed to communicate with the common people or policymakers also. So, as he said, it is easy to predict the time and predict the point of the tipping point or kinds of threshold. I would like to understand, for the attendants to understand. So, threshold means in Korean 임계치. It's in Korean. So 인계값이라고 하는 것은 어떤 값이 도달하기 전까지 우리가 아무것도 못 느끼고 있다가 어느 것이 도달하는 순간 우리가 그것을 느끼게 되는 걸 인계값이라고 이렇게 이야기합니다. 그래서 우리가 흔히 스레스홀드라고 하는데, as is said, the threshold is the edge of the table, as mentioned in his presentation. So, also, we have a time to discuss with him how to communicate to addressing the climate changes. Also, the more effective communications. And next discussant is Mr. Kim Joo-jin. Please welcome him.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to first thank the COCF and KAIST for inviting me to speak with such great panelists, especially Mr. Han. It is a great honor to meet you. As Dr. Jun has just introduced, we are an organization working to reduce coal. We currently focus on preventing domestic and overseas new coal developed by the Korean government and Korean companies, and expediting the decommissioning of existing coal. I was asked, I understand this session is kind of tilted to climate science, but I was asked to speak a little bit of coal power, reducing coal power during the session. We believe that coal power is the easiest way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, especially in Northeast Asia. It is the low-lying fruit in terms of greenhouse gases. I will go into that later on. And reducing coal is not just about reducing GHGs, it's also about financial stability and competitiveness of the power sector. And the reason why that is an issue like that is because of the consistently lowering price of renewables. Lazard, a well-known investment firm, publishes its data on levelized cost of energy, a very well-known index for the cost of energy. And this was out last week. According to the data, it is very apparent that utility scale solar or wind is much more cheaper than nuclear or coal. By the way, this slide is about new coal versus new renewables. Important feature of Lazard's new report is that it also compared new renewables versus existing coal and nuclear. Lazard's point here is mentioning, what Lazard is saying here is that existing coal and nuclear is about to become more expensive than new coal, new renewables, which means that this is a big issue. This is a competitive issue for existing coal and nuclear, not only new coal and nuclear. For this reason, and the same thing applies to Korea. I mean, Lazard's data was not about Korea, but Bloomberg has also done a similar analysis on Korea. According to Bloomberg's analysis, by around 2020, new coal will be more expensive than new solar. And by around 2024, existing coal will be more expensive than new PV. So by that time, it's going to be very economically unreasonable to operate an existing coal plant. It's going to be a better choice to operate a new PV plant. The thing is that many people say that, oh, I can't believe that. It's Bloomberg, but that's kind of weird. That's not what I see. That is because what you see, what many policymakers, especially in Korea, see, is the power market price, which is not the true cost of energy. So if you lift out all the regulations and all the distortions in the power market and see the true cost and make the market transparent and fair, that means that you will be able to see that. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, our energy regulator, also has a similar view. It projects, it is a little bit more conservative, but it projects that by 2030, I mean, even before 2030, renewables will be more cheaper than coal. As you can see here, coal is will be around 90 Korean won, whereas PV about 70 Korean won per kilowatt hour, and onshore wind about 80 Korean won. And for this reason, IEA's this year most recent report, this also report came out around a month ago, shows that shows where the global investment is directed to. It's the green, light green and green part is all renewables. The dark red part, the brownish dark red part, is coal. So you can see where the money is heading for. Bloomberg also has a similar analysis. It shows where the money will be heading for in the energy sector until 2040. It's going to be mainly wind and solar, whereas coal lies on the bottom. Unfortunately, in Korea, we are going in a different direction. Just between 2016 August and 2017 September, during the 14-month period, 11 units of coal representing 10 gigawatts of coal was introduced to our Korean grid. That is, in terms of greenhouse gases, around 70 million tons. And you know what? That's twice than Denmark's emissions, am I right? That's about twice. That's about twice than Denmark's emissions. So we added 2 Denmarks in terms of emissions during last year and the previous year. The more sad fact is that we are adding more right now. 3 units are under construction. 4 will also soon begin construction. And the last units that will probably added in Korea are, which are located on the east coast of Korea, will be commissioned by around 2024 at earliest. And by 2024, as I said, the LCOEs, the cost trends of coal, will be devastating. It will become a financial problem. It will become a stranded asset. And somebody will have to bail these assets out. These are multi-billion-dollar assets. The combined, each unit represents about $3 to $4 billion, and somebody will have to pay it. And eventually, it will be the consumers, electricity consumers. So the conclusion is that making our power market fair and transparent is the easiest, less politically controversial way to address climate change in Northeast Asia. The same thing you can see in China and Japan as well. I was in Japan yesterday. The same thing. Japan has almost the similar problems. In fact, Japan is adding about 20 more coal power plants right now. So they have a more serious situation. Removing subsidies, excessive capacity payments, variable cost-based merit orders, things like that will all help Korea address the global issue of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. As he claimed in the last slide, making our power market fair and transparent is the easiest to addressing the climate change. You know, according to the latest forecast measure of government, LNG will now pay 2.5 times more than tax than coal power plant. But it will change. In future, coal will be twice as taxed as LNG power plant. If governmental policies not only to eliminate the support, but to put more burden on the coal power plant. If this happens, does this mean that coal-fired power plant will lose their economy, financial economy? Or is this play the same as your suggestion?
Yeah.
It's the same with your claims? Now we have around 13 minutes to finish. Professor Richards, you have something to speak? Talked about the discussions presentation.
Yes, I have a couple of points that have come up here that I'd like to pick up on. The first is, and obviously I don't have any slides because I just subjected you to a lot of slides. But one point I think is really important here is this risk issue that was brought up. That this really is about risk. And usually when you go to a dinner party and somebody says, do you believe in climate change? It's all about a prediction thing. Do you think it's happening or not? And in fact, it's really a risk issue. And it's very important to emphasize that nobody has said that a 2-degree temperature increase is safe. And it is not science that said 2 degrees. This is something politicians picked up off the shelf. And I think the most important message that comes from the new IPCC report about trying to stay within 1.5 degrees is now they've done the burning ember diagrams, and if I should have shown slides, I would have liked to have shown them. They've done burning ember diagrams that show what are the risks at the temperature we are now, where we are feeling climate change. What are the risks at 1.5 degrees warming above pre-industrial? What are the risks at 2? And they're increasing. So the message is every bit of warming is important here, and it's increasing the risk as we increase the warming. And that's not something we talk about very much. Another point is and you were talking the global commons, you were mentioning that we don't have a global government. No, we don't have a global government, and we don't want a global government. But governance is not the same as government. We manage our trade globally without having a global government. I'm sure we can manage our resources globally without having a global government, but it means that there are different actors. It's not just state governments we're dealing with. It's companies. It's to a very large degree companies. If you look at the 100 entities on this planet that are the richest, I think it's only 43 that are countries. The rest are companies. So companies are very important, but you and I are as well. When we talk global resources, we're talking our real currency. And none of us would use more money than absolutely necessary to buy a good or a service. But none of us can claim to use the minimum amount of resources required to maintain the lifestyle that we have. So this is about changing the way we think, you and me, the way we act. It's about companies, and yes, it's also about governance making good decisions. I couldn't help but think and worry when you were describing the coal situation in Asia, that in Europe, people are falling over each other to who can be the different countries in banning the use of coal by earlier and earlier and earlier. What's this going to do to global trade if we have one part of the globe banning coal, another are we going to end up putting tariffs on those that produce with coal? I don't know, but there's some very interesting geopolitics that are hiding in there. Another point is that we're here talking about energy today, but this is very much not just about energy. I tried to say that in my talk. And one of the biggest challenges we have is the food system. And I think it's really interesting that it's relatively easy to get the discussion going about why we need to change energy and how we need to change energy. But think of the way we have our business structure around energy. It's relatively large companies usually that are able to invest for transformation into the future. When it comes to the food system, we're talking 1 billion one-man businesses on the planet. And where they are lucky enough to have a bank, the bank wants them to be in black by the end of the month or the end of the year. They cannot invest in the current system in the transformation that has to happen. And it's up to us to try and find a way to help companies in different kinds of sectors make this transformation. And finally, 2 small things. One is whether this really is a failure of scientific communication. Because communication implies bringing information out there. Dialogue implies that the information is also received. Now, it was in 1859 that Darwin came with his book about evolution. And evolution has been documented in so many ways and communicated in so many ways. And you still have over 40% of Americans saying they don't believe in evolution. So I'm not sure it's only a question of communication. If you don't want to hear the message, it doesn't matter how well or how often or how completely it's been communicated. And finally, a small catastrophe. Yes, I think that would be a very good idea. The problem with small catastrophes are that they're small and they're regional. And we don't really care in Denmark when hurricanes hit in Korea, for that matter. Right now, we have a small catastrophe going on. It's in California. And it is climate change. But it's politically incorrect to say it's climate change. And the moment that you do, people will point out, well, you know, fires happen all the time. It doesn't have to be climate change. No, it doesn't have to be climate change. It's much easier when two airplanes fly into two buildings in New York on a single day to say this was not a natural catastrophe. It's much, much harder when we're looking at climate change. So I don't know what kind of small catastrophe we could have. I think we're having them all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting comment, additional comments. So, Professor Richards and editorial writer Han needed time or minutes to communicate the subject, the climate change communications. So, yeah. So, Professor Richardson, I have one question. So, you mentioned about the coal power plant. So, in your opinion, so which is the more appropriate method to generate electricity? So, nuclear power plant and coal power plant.
Somehow I knew you were going to come to that question. I think it's really, really important to recognize, everybody says, what's going to replace? There is no one energy that's going to replace fossil fuels. It will be a bouquet of technologies, and yes, nuclear is a part of that bouquet because it's there now. But you couldn't possibly solve the problem that we're in at the moment by saying, now let's go nuclear. First of all, it's one of the most expensive ways you can go. Second of all, it takes a very, very, very long time to transform to nuclear, and we don't have that time. So I believe that we're talking about a bouquet. We're going to use all of the technologies that can pay. We will use the cheapest ones first, and then we will go to more expensive. And that different countries will have different bouquets of technologies that they use. But if you make me choose between coal and nuclear, I would say nuclear, but don't expect nuclear to solve the problem.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have only 4 minutes. So please, if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hands visibly. Yeah. In center, yeah.
저는 저기 코멘트를 좀 하겠습니다. 이제 원전을 이용하는 것을 이제 그 에너지 전환으로 생각하는 이제 보통들 생각하는데요. 우리가 이제 그 기후 변화를 막을 수 있는 방법이 있습니다. 그게 뭐냐면은 기후 변화로 인한 이제 그 해수면 상승하고 그 사막화의 그 잘못된 사이클이 형성이 됐는데요. 그것을 원전을 그러니까 아주 이제 안전한 원전을 발전소를 만들어서 그걸 이제 우리 전 세계가 연구를 해야 되고 또 이제 우리 삼성 같은 그런 회사들이 연구를 해갖고 그 해수면을 담수로 전환을 시켜갖고 그러면 이제 그 해수면이 이제 상승되는 게 이제 줄어드는 거죠. 그러면서 이제 이 광막한 이제 전 지구에 그 사막화되고 있는 그 대륙에다가 이제 물을 계속 이제 그 강물로 이렇게 전환해서 공급하면은 해수면 상승도 막고 사막화도 막고 해갖고 지구 생태계가 이제 이제 제대로 형성되는 겁니다. 그래서 지금과 같은 방법은 소프트적인 방법이고 앞으로는 하드적인 방법을 유엔에서 연구하고 또 우리 북쪽에다가 영변에다가 이제 그런 그 핵 발전소 연구 기구를 좀 설치하는 것이 아주 바람직하다고 생각이 들어서 잠깐 말씀드렸습니다.
Thank you. Comments? So yeah.
I would like to comment on this. So nuclear power is interesting in many different ways, but also there are other costs. So we heard about the subsidies, of course, but there is also the cost of insurance. Are there private insurance companies that insure nuclear power plants for a meltdown? The answer, at least in Europe, is no. So which means the general public is insuring the risk. So if you add the risk of something happening, we know probabilities are low that something happens. Korean power plants are relatively safe, but still there is a probability. Let's call it X. X multiplied with the damage that would occur if Gijang power plant went off, had a nuclear meltdown, Busan and Ulsan would be uninhabitable. What is the cost associated with this probability? So do the math, and we should really listen to insurance companies. If insurance companies don't insure nuclear power plants for a meltdown, this is actually a strong message. If the general public takes the risk, it means we are banking, we are borrowing the money from our future generations. And talking about the economics of future energy solutions, we need to talk about the economics of hidden costs. And one of them is insurance costs. The other one for climate change is climate damage costs. Not only at the unsubsidized cost, but also the potential damage costs of if something happens, if something goes wrong. So that's part of economics. And if you do the economics of this one, you can say they're relatively safe, whatever safe means, but nuclear power would even come out much more expensive than in your analysis.
Thank you for your kind explanation. So, Mr. Han, you have something to speak? 한삼이님, have you something to speak? Yeah.
예, 한국에서는 참 이 원자 문제를 놓고 굉장히 논란이 많습니다. 저는 뭐 여러 가지 논란의 형태가 있습니다만은 제가 말씀드리고 싶은 것은 우리가 선택할 수 있는 여러 가지 기술들이 있죠. 뭐 원전도 있고 뭐 태양광도 있고 뭐 여러 가지 있습니다만 아직은 우리가 고려해야 될 건 이 기술들이 앞으로 더 발전될 여지들을 다 갖고 있는 기술들이라는 뜻입니다. 근데 그 기술이 어느 정도까지 더 발전돼서 더 경제성 있고 더 안전하고 이런 기술로 우리가 자리 잡을지 아직 예측이 안 된다. 그러니까 기술 발전에 어떤 불확실성이 있습니다. 그 불확실성을 우리가 인정을 하고 그렇다면 미래 20년, 30년 뒤에 또는 뭐 50년 뒤에 어떤 기술이 정말로 더 발전을 해서 우리의 미래를 책임질 기술, 에너지 기술로 자리 잡을지 우리가 지금 예단할 수 없기 때문에 우리는 그 각각의 기술들을 잘 조합을 해서 같이 가져가는 게 현명한 방법이 아닌가 저는 그렇게 생각을 합니다.
네, we have no time. It's just time to have a lunch. Only one people. Yeah.
질문을 하겠습니다.
Excuse me, sir. Please, could you please stand up so that everyone can see you?
So please let me know your name and affiliations.
네, 저는 서울대학교에 생기는 나사국민협회 신정호 부회장입니다. 저는 미국의 교수님 오늘 발제 듣고 제가 한 말씀 드려서 멘토 좀 하고 싶습니다. 미국 정부가 50% 이상 다윈의 진화론을 믿지 않는 것은 좀 미국의 역사가 청교도의 역사이기 때문에 하나님을 경외하고 성경적 공부를 하기 때문에 창조를 믿기 때문에 다윗의 진화를 믿지 않습니다. 이 기후변화도 마찬가지로 하나님이 주시는 태풍과 그리고 자연적인 현상으로 주시는 온도 차하고 그리고 인간 과학이 만들어 놓은 그런 원자력이라든가 아니면 핵폭탄을 해가지고 우리가 해운대 영화를 보듯이 우리나라에서도 이 해일의 문제점을 갖다가 극복해 나가려면 그에 대한 기후 변화에 대해서 대응할 수 있는 방안을 모색하는 것이 좋겠다고 생각합니다. 감사합니다.
Now, our subject explained to Darwin's evolution, so the power plant. So, but anyway, I think the climate change is related to many of the components in our common societies. So the this, yeah. Yeah.
네, 뭐 시간이 촉박한다고 그러니까요.
Focus on the subject, please.
예, 그냥 그 우리 말로 하겠습니다. 제가 보기에는 이제 그동안에 여러 가지 이런 세미나나 한 10여 년째 이렇게 참여를 하고 있는데, 우선 신재생 에너지, 특히 태양광을 중심으로 한 신재생 에너지가 이미 우리한테 솔루션을, 에너지에 대한 모든 솔루션을 주었다고 저는 개인적으로 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그런데 우리나라의 경우는 이제 그럼 어떻게 하느냐? 그래서 우리나라의 경우에는 또 우리나라뿐만이 아니고 국토가 상대적으로 좁고 인구가 아주 조밀한 그런 나라들, 그런 지역에서는 에너지에, 특히 우리나라 이제 정책으로서는 신재생 에너지의 기술과 과학, 기술, 그 다음에 경영, 운영, 특히 ESS나 또는 뭡니까, 우리 태양광의 어떤 모듈이라든지 뭐 등등 이런 기술에 집중적인 투자를 하고 개발을 해가지고 이 에너지 신재생을 가지고 우리 에너지 자급자족으로 하자는 그런 정책은 지금 20% 달성까지 아주 좋습니다. 그러나 나머지를 어떻게 할 것이냐. 그래서 우리나라의 경우에는 신재생의 에너지를 중심으로 한 에너지 기술로 기술 입국을 해가지고 에너지 공급을 다시 받아와야 되는 그런, 지금 석유를 전부 수입해서 쓰고 있지 않습니까? 그런 마찬가지로 이런 정책으로 강력하게 드라이브를 했으면 좋겠습니다.
네, thank you for your suggestions. We have to finish. So I would like to summarize this session. So Professor Richardson and her colleagues created the term hothouses. Hothouse, you know, the meaning in dictionary is the greenhouse. But he said hothouse is the 4 or 5 degrees Celsius warmer than above the pre-industrial period, right? Yeah. So she said Earth system have not been closed. It means we still have hope. But also she argued we have to move from these hothouses pathways to the stabilized Earth pathway before the door be closed. Door is kind of threshold. So, to quote the final line of the famous film Shawshank's Redemption, not Shawshank's Escape. So, I would like to say, the Earth is a good place, maybe the best place in the cosmos. No good things must go away. We must protect our common home, the Earth. No matter what, I will be hoping that the conference will change you and keep the Earth safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful session. That concludes the plenary 1 of the 5th Annual Seoul Climate Energy Conference. Now, we will have a brief photo session. All moderator and panels, please come forward to the stage. And meanwhile, please remain seated for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All done.